Welcome to JJ the Wedding Planner Podcast, the podcast for all the lovebirds who are young or young at heart, the non-traditionalists who might like some traditions, los que hablan español e inglés, or maybe more like Spanglish, where the one rule is that we are exclusively inclusive. I'm JJ, and after almost 8 years in the wedding industry, serving couples of all backgrounds, I realized that there wasn't a central place where I can send them to hear from all the amazing POC professionals that I had met. So, aquí estamos para servirles. After each episode, you will walk away feeling empowered to take on the bits of planning that lead up to your big day, while keeping La Tia lovingly off your back. Bienvenidos! Well, hello there, and welcome to Season 3 of JJ the Wedding Planner Podcast. I'm freaking out. I'm excited that we are here again. We are back for Season 3. Somebody pinch me because I seriously can't believe it. I am in awe, first and foremost, of how far we have come, the response that y'all have had to this podcast, the comments that you have made, what you have told us that this has meant for you, for our people, our community, nuestra comunidad. It's important for us to hear different voices, to have different opinions, to see a variety of viewpoints on this thing called the wedding industry. And so thank you again for everyone who supported us along the way. And if you're brand new, welcome. We're excited that you're here. And I am just so ready to get started with this season's episode 1. We are excited to have Krista Parker with us today as our very first guest to kick off this season. Krista is a second-generation Filipina America, a true Valley girl at heart, and an associate marriage and family therapist. She helps individuals, families, and couples, and specializes in trauma, grief, loss, anxiety, relationships, and BIPOC Asian American cultural challenges and issues. Krista graduated from Pepperdine University with her master's in clinical psychology with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. And she's currently a PhD candidate at Antioch University and a therapist at Calabasas Counseling and Grief Recovery Center. Krista has grown a passion for social justice in the mental health field for the POC community, and her mission is to open the conversation about mental health and grief in hopes to destigmatize mental health and intergenerational trauma in the BIPOC AAPI community. I am so excited to have her here with you. As you will hear from the recording, we just had a blast and an incredible conversation. So get any notebooks out that you want to get out as we get ready for this conversation. Without further ado, here we go. All right. Welcome everyone to Season 3. I cannot believe that we've made it this far in the first place. And as most of y'all know, it's been a while. So it's nice to be back. I'm so excited to have our guest Krista with us today. It's a big deal to have her with us and just to hear what she has to say about all of this. As most of you know, you've heard her intro, you've heard her bio, and I just think it's really important for us to have this perspective from a professional in this field. The podcast has grown from talking about all the pretty things like flowers and dresses, but it's really moving a lot deeper into important conversations that we should be having with our partners as we're planning our wedding, preferably before we even get engaged. These are just good things to talk about. So everyone listening, I am so excited that you get to have this time with Krista. And Krista, thank you again for being on here, for saying yes to this. And we're so excited to have you.
Thank you. Well, first, I want to say thank you for having me on. Yes. It's really nice to reconnect with you. I always want to call you boss. Because that's what I called you at my friend's wedding.
Yes. Give us a little backstory so people don't think that I'm a weirdo telling people to call me boss.
Well, so one of my good friends, Angie, shout out to Angie. She got married during the pandemic in 2020. And that's the only person I would go to a wedding in the pandemic for. And that's where I met our lovely host. And we all kept joking around saying that she's the boss, because she was. And she was so sweet and made everything so like smooth at the wedding. And it was just so enjoyable. So I love being on here, but also love to reconnect with you because it was such an awesome experience with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes. So I don't just go around telling people to call me boss. They chose that. But it was just such a fun event. Again, shout out to Angie. We went to high school together, and 10 years later, she messages me and she's like, hey, I want you to do my wedding. So boom, it happened. And working with you all as her friends and her family and both sides, right? Paolo as well. Like, you guys were incredible. And that's why I love doing weddings. I just love people and getting to meet people. You just never know who you're going to meet. And so we have built this friendship, getting to know each other on Instagram, and right. Thank God for social media, especially during a pandemic. Yeah. But it's been so cool to see all that you're doing with your business and your schooling. And I know people have heard that, like, that's so exciting. You're in this new program. So since they've heard some of the basics of who you are, tell us a little bit more about, anything that you want us to know about you as we get started.
Yeah. So just a little bit more background, like the intro said, I am a Valley girl at heart.
Yes.
My mom immigrated here, became the first generation Filipino American. I'm the second. I was born in Northridge, raised in Silmar. So I'm, like I said, a Valley girl at heart. And I actually became a marriage and family therapist because my mom died in 2016. And as a brown person, I had no idea what I was going through. And so I went to therapy myself and I realized, wow, like I really want to do this, and, I love psychology. I love personal growth stuff. I had so many self-help books and all that good stuff. Yes. And relationships of all kinds just kind of fascinated me. And so that's kind of what pushed me into it. It was kind of I guess like a personal thing that I was going through, but I also wanted to help other people. And I truly believe that like God put me through all this stuff so that I can help other people, and being in the actual field, I realized there's not that many POCs and there's such a huge need. And I love doing couples therapy because, we don't really think about how the intergenerational trauma that we have all as BIPOC and, POC have ever experienced affects our relationships. Like I saw it through my parents' relationships that ended in separation. I saw it in my relationships, how it like kind of, transmitted. And I saw that in all the relationships, around me. And so I really want to help people break those patterns because all that stuff really does impact how we interact as adults, how we interact in our relationships as adults. And it could really, really end some of our relationships very messily.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's such a great point. First of all, the fact that you decided to take such a difficult part of your life and then turn around and use it for good, I think really shows who you are and why you're in this field. And I think that's such an important thing, right? We talk about in wedding planning, we talk often about the day, that one day, but truly, and what all my current clients or past clients know, I always talk about, yes, the wedding day is important and it's fun and it's beautiful and you're spending a lot of money on it, but you're starting a marriage. It's this like, next level. You're unlocking the next level of your relationship and going into it with some support, some counseling, someone that's unbiased to talk to, it's going to make a big difference, right? Yeah. Because we want relationships to work. And that doesn't mean that they're going to be perfect, that they're going to be without flaws. Of course, if you're choosing to join your life with another person, there's bound to be some issues, right? We're whole people coming together. And that's why I'm really excited that you're here and that you're, willing to talk about this. And I'm excited that we're starting the season off in this way to really continue to drive that point with people is relationships matter. It matters how they start and it matters how you continue them, how you work on them throughout the whole time. It's not just you're married and now you're good forever. It's kind of like,
no.
keep working on it, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So let's go ahead then and just kind of get started with the conversation and continue on. And so I think one of the most important questions, or the one that I hear the most often, is when is the right time to start counseling? And I would say like after you're born, because that sounds like a traumatic thing. So I am very much pro therapy, pro counseling, pro life coach, whatever title it is, I'm all there for it. So, but in a partnership, for a couple, what do you think? When's a good time to just start seeking that outside support?
Yeah. So anytime's ideal. Unfortunately, us therapists, we get people when they're in crisis mode already. Mm-hmm. And that makes sense, right? Kind of like, oh man, we got to talk to someone, right? But it's a therapist's dream to have clients come in proactively. Also, my title does says marriage and family therapy. However, I cater to all types of relationships. Yeah. So even if you don't believe in marriage, we're very inclusive in that. At least I am as a therapist. Yeah. I'm very inclusive in that. And so even if you don't believe in marriage, coming in for a tune-up, coming in to kind of see what's going on, what could we do better, what's not working, what is working, is really ideal for any time. Therapy also isn't for only serious mental health disorders. It's sometimes navigating like, oh, where do I want to be in a relationship? I have a lot of people who are dating right now that come see me.
That's awesome.
So trying to navigate that and figure out why they act the way that they do. And since the pandemic, anxiety and depression symptoms have gone from 11% to 41%. So it's a huge leap, and there has been a lot of death, a lot of grief, a lot of stressful political events, and essentially trauma. We all have been traumatized by this. And so that could pose a huge relationship strain. During the pandemic, a lot of relationships were affected. And it wasn't necessarily the relationship. It was the outside external factors of the pandemic that inadvertently affected the relationship. Yeah. And so anytime's ideal. Even if you do come in crisis mode, that's okay. Some people are just not ready. And I do want to acknowledge the mistrust in the mental health system of the BIPOC community. There has been discrimination and racism and bias in the field. And so I totally get why people don't want to go to counseling. However, there are some culturally competent therapists.
Thank you, Jesus.
Some POC, and I'm hoping it's changing, right? And you do have a choice. And so there is many therapists like myself who go in here trying to help people, right, navigate and hopefully gain the trust back into the mental health system. So I totally get the stigma, totally get the mistrust.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Absolutely. And two things that I want to point out from what you said. Number one, that therapy isn't only for severe mental health needs, right? I know that is the stigma that, especially, I don't know about other cultures, but for me in the Latino culture, as a Mexican, it's like, oh, if you're seeing a therapist, estás loca, like you're crazy. Yeah. And that's exactly it, right? It's like, oh, you're seeing a therapist? Like, what happened? Are you on medication? Like, it's like, no, man, I'm just trying to get my life together. like it doesn't have to be to that level. And of course, if it is at that level, yes, definitely seek help.
Yeah.
But it's not just for that. And so I think like breaking that stigma is one of the most important things that we're doing. I see you on social media talk about that often. And I try to talk about that as often as I can as well, just because there's more to therapy, counseling, coaching, excuse me, than just dealing with a mental health issue.
Yeah. And, same with the Filipino community. I think it's very common for all the minorities. Yeah. And what I've been seeing a lot is that intergenerational trauma of shame being passed down. And so that really, really affects us. And affects us in our relationships, affects us on seeking help, right? Especially looking at the immigration status of someone, how they came here, all these things, the fear of being deported, right? So of course you're not going to want to seek out help.
Yeah.
Right? However, some therapists can actually help you through the immigration process if they're culturally informed, culturally responsive,
Yes.
right? Therapists can help you through this process. And also a lot of times, well, at least a lot of times people who want to do social justice in therapy will offer pro bono or will offer a sliding scale. And so, yes, it is scary. However, therapists are not against you, will actually help you through this process, because it is, if you think about the immigration process in alone,
oh my gosh, yeah,
it's so stressful. It's so traumatizing. There's so much anxiety and fear. There needs to be some help.
Absolutely. And that was the second thing I wanted to mention is the mistrust in the field, right? Because typically when we hear doctors or therapists, they're typically old white people, right?
Yes.
Like, I'm just gonna say it, like, that's just the truth.
That's actually factual. I don't know the percentage, but that's factual.
It's what you see, and it's what we've seen in TV and in movies. It's like, if you're going to a therapist, who's there, right? It's an older white person. And I know for me, when I was originally searching for a therapist, I'm like, I need someone who just understands where I'm coming from, like, as a baseline. I'm like, I've got a lot more to share, but as a baseline, I need someone who understands my culture, who if I say something in Spanish that just comes out, they get it. I don't have to explain and try to translate. And there's a lot that isn't, you can't learn unless you're a part of a certain community, right? And I know there's a lot of well-meaning people out there, and I'm not trying to put anyone down, but I am saying there's something special about finding a therapist or counselor who you can connect with because of language, because of culture, because of possibly even immigration experience, right? All of these different things, it's important to us. And so
100%,
that's definitely something I want to mention for people listening and couples, is finding the right person for you. You may go to a couple people that are not the right people for you.
Shop around.
Shop around. And that doesn't mean therapy as a whole isn't for you. It means that person or that practice isn't for you. And so, if there's anything else you want to add about just working with the right type of person.
I'm actually glad that you mentioned that, of like, it's the person, not the actual whole field, because I think what happens is, especially if you have insurance, right? You go find a therapist and sometimes they'll just assign one. You don't even get a choice. Then you have a bad experience because you don't feel safe, or you don't feel like you want to describe your culture to the therapist, right? And then you have a bad taste in your mouth. The system has kind of made it more of a Eurocentric view on when it comes to treatment and all these things. And fortunately, the tide is changing more, I feel like, hopefully, at least from my view, when, seeing people, my fellow therapists on Instagram and stuff, there's more POCs out there offering services and everything. And yes, we have a lot of the evidence-based stuff, like practices, and, that is very important, but also evidence-based is also Eurocentric a lot of the time. Sometimes other cultures are not really included in the research.
Yes.
That is changing though. And so trying to find a better intervention is like one of my goals. And that's why I'm in going into the PhD program. Because I don't think, for me personally, what I've seen, there's not really a culturally, I don't know, there's not that much evidence base for different cultures. And I want to help change that, hopefully. But shop around.
Yes. And actually, we're mentioning like culture and race and language a lot, but that also includes the LGBTQIA community. In that so much of what is out there is for like straight heteronormative relationships, right? And it's kind of like, oh my God, finally we're publicly seeing the spectrum of people and relationships that there's always been. And finally, we're seeing some of this. And so I know that's a whole other issue.
Oh my gosh.
With this, right? There's been so much damage, so much pain, so much hurt, so much violence towards that community, our community. And it's hard to see, because we need the support just as much as anyone else. And to feel like all we're going to hear is we're wrong, we're bad, all of these things. Of course, there's going to be additional mistrust if now you're a person of color who's, of trans experience. Like, where do you go?
There, and actually the APA, which is like the Psychological Association, has apologized for discrimination, right? Actually, the LGBTQIA plus community is one of the most targeted ones that accepted the most, I won't say targeted, but accepted the most pain and hurt and mistrust. However, now there's like a surge of LGBTQIA plus therapists now, thank God,
for real,
who are merging out, going I saw one workshop was talking about like that community and religious trauma, right?
Yep.
And all these things, and my heart lit up because I was like, wow, we are changing as a field, and hopefully we're going in that direction, right? And so there's a lot of mistrust, and it's a whole systemic thing. It's not just, you know, one person, one group of people. It's a product of the system, you know? Yeah.
Absolutely. And that actually leads right into our next question, because I know that some people who are getting married in the Catholic Church, part of what you have to do, there are certain requirements, is to do like a marriage prep, marriage counseling type thing, specifically through the church with a priest. And for some people that works. Obviously, if you're choosing to get married in the Catholic Church, that's totally fine. That's for you. And so if a couple isn't already doing something like that through their religious organization, whatever it may be, why should they still try to seek out couples therapy before they get married?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would highly recommend premarital therapy and couples therapy in general. A lot of people don't take that option, but, you know, it actually really helps in, you know, setting the blueprint of kind of the marriage, right? So a blueprint has all these things. Of course, it can change, right?
Yeah.
Because you grow and you change. However, it's a good start. It's a good start of really understanding each other, understanding kind of what values you guys have, because that's a huge part of a marriage, right? And also having those hard conversations before you get there. We all want the proactivity, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so, you know, we always hear the whole, you know, 50% of all marriages end in divorce. And that percentage has fluctuated, but it's stayed pretty high, in my opinion, for over the couple years. And so, you know, like I said, even the pandemic, it's probably gotten worse with the transition and everything. And so, you know, premarital therapy can really, really help the transition into merging your lives together.
Yeah.
However, each marriage is so unique and different. So that's going to dictate your therapeutic goals. So,
interesting.
Yeah. So here is some general things that premarital therapy can, because that's the best part about therapy, is that you could read all these things online. You could read all the books. However, therapy suits and tailors to you specifically. It's very individualized, right? And so, yes, you could you know how to see those quotes, the relationship quotes online.
Yes.
And
they're pretty quotes.
Yeah. And sometimes it can apply to you and sometimes it can't. It doesn't. And so therapy will definitely have like that specific tailored to you fit. Yeah. Just like wedding planning, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Specifically tailored to them as a couple, right? And so, you know, building that blueprint, setting realistic expectations. It can help with that, help with the planning of the future. One of my favorite things to do in couples therapy is, you know, seeing potential conflict areas. So solvable problems, perpetual problems, which might not be able to be solved, stuff like that. And, you know, communication skills, conflict resolution, decision-making, all that fun, hard stuff.
That's the thing, like I think as humans, as just imperfect people in the world, we want to not have conflict. right? We're like, I will change myself so that we don't have this. Like, at least some of us people pleasers are that way. And some people are boom, ready for the conflict, ready to take their stand. And so if you get people who are from the very opposite side of those ways that they deal with conflict, of course, every issue is going to feel like it's an explosion. We can't find a way to work together through this issue.
Exactly.
And that can go from small things to huge things, right?
Yeah. And there's even a deep-seated trauma that might be coming up where, you saw a certain relationship type in your parents and you either want to be like them or not be like them at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which also affects conflict resolution skills. And so also when I do couples therapy, I really examine the family of origin that we call it. That's like the fancy name, but basically the family you grew up in.
Yeah.
Right. And kind of how you saw conflict handled. What was modeled to you? Because we subconsciously take that on because that's how we learn. If you don't have a good model of conflict resolution, which a lot of us who are, in the minorities most likely did it.
Right.
I'm not going to generalize, right? It can really affect us. And some people I've seen don't know anything outside of it. And so they're like, why isn't this working? Why can't I get my way? Yeah,
absolutely. And so again, these are all just things that we're bringing up that it's important to just have that unbiased person because, if we ask our best friend, what do you think about this situation? What so-and-so did to me or said to me or reacted in this way? Those are biased reactions, right? Obviously it's important. Yes, we want our family to like our partner and to have our back and all of those things. But if you're wanting to actually work through the conflict, not just for the moment, but for the long term, then having someone like you, that's how we do it, right? That's how we do the actual real difficult work that most of us probably don't want to do.
Yeah. And contrary to popular belief, we do not referee.
Yeah.
Okay. As a couples therapist, we do not referee. It's not about who's right or who's wrong. Really what the therapist does is watch you guys and your dynamic as is. And he'll bring up what they see and kind of and then ask the couple what they would like to work on. Kind of like an outside, it's like looking in. Right. I wish we could watch people in their actual home.
Right. I know what you mean. Yeah. So see their dynamic at home, right? Where they're not trying to mask something in front of a professional.
Exactly. So premarital therapy is really good at discussing finances, beliefs, values. What role would you like in a marriage? Right. Traditional, non-traditional.
Yeah.
Children. Should we have them? Should we not? Okay, if we do have them, how are we going to raise them?
That's a whole nother episode. Absolutely.
Oh, and I think also one of the really good ones is family relationships. So just also how you are in your family, how you are with your in-laws or future in-laws, right? And all that is really important too for all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the it might not be something that people want to hear, but it's realistic is
tell them the truth. Give it to them.
Is that, premarital therapy will really see if you guys are compatible for each other. And if not, raise the question if you guys are willing to work for it. Okay. Because you can work through it. However, are you really, really up for the challenge? Because it will be a challenge.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that is the biggest gem of this whole thing. And I know, again, this is a wedding planning podcast. I know. So it seems counterintuitive for me to tell someone, hey, this may not be the thing for you. I mean, I'm not the therapist, so I won't say that. But, to just say, hey, you're making a life decision right now. And those are important things to look at. And that, how a person reacts to you even bringing up therapy. And I didn't mention this question, but as we were talking, something kind of came up to me, which is the truth for many people, that what if one person wants to go to therapy together and the other doesn't? Because I'm sure that happens often, right?
Yeah. And, it's not going to work if both aren't ready. Right. That's the reality of it. But also, as a partner that wants to go seek therapy, trying to understand your partner's perspective and understand why maybe he doesn't want to go to therapy or she doesn't want to go to therapy. It could be that mistrust that we're talking about, or, we're not that bad or anything like that. Right? And kind of understanding their perspective, because again, yes, you could force and like give an ultimatum, I guess. However, if he doesn't want to do it, or she doesn't want to do it, or they don't want to do it, then I don't know if you might be wasting your money. On that. But that is, I hear that a lot, by the way.
Yeah.
I just want by like personal like clients, like I just wish that we could go to couples therapy, couples therapy isn't gonna fix it. Sometimes it actually is might help you end the relationship. Right. So sometimes it's not fun.
Yeah, absolutely. But you don't know what will happen if you just keep sweeping things under the rug, right? Because if we're talking like long-term, lifelong relationships, are you hurting yourself by staying in a relationship where you're just making it work? Versus we know we're imperfect, but we're trying and we're working on it, and we're both doing our parts in coming together, right? Because there's always going to be things that come up, but who are you fighting this life with, right? Like, is this person going to be there to do so, or are they just going to kind of back away from the issues? And we know life is just not easy. Really difficult things come up. As you mentioned, right, this pandemic has been so difficult on couples. People have been forced to be in homes together for a lot more time together than they're used to. And we did see that affect a lot of different relationships, family dynamics. And so it's just kind of that thing of, how do you work on issues together?
And honestly, the process of divorce, I would also say that that's even more scary, of kind of going through that, which keeps a lot of people in their marriages. Right. And so that makes it even way harder.
Yes.
Right. There actually was a study where a lot of people are like really terrified of getting married.
Yeah.
Because of like that possibility of divorce.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was marriage first, then get to know each other, kind of, and then all these things. But nowadays, it's more like a marriage is the end goal. So that's why I do have hope for love and marriages, because people are really trying to figure out who they are.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe it is fear.
Right.
But it's a good thing to get to know each other really well, because marriage is a commitment.
Yep.
And also there's a lot of legality stuff that goes in there at the same time.
Yes. Yeah. It's both. And if your partner isn't ready, I mean, there isn't anything that says you can't go to therapy, right? And
exactly.
Obviously you're only going to get one side of the conversation, but we can't change another person. Even if they do say, okay, fine, we'll go to therapy, that doesn't mean the person's going to change. And that maybe that isn't even the goal, right? Like, the goal is, we have a lot of personal healing that we need to do. And in doing that ourselves, I think that's always the best way to show someone else, whether it's a certain lifestyle, whether it's a certain way of eating, whether it's finances or therapy, whatever it is, you start with yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
100%. 100%. Yes. And also with couples therapy, I always recommend that each person in the couple get their own individual therapy outside of the couples therapy, because we don't have enough time to tackle everyone's personal stuff.
Right.
It's only like 50 minutes to an hour. And so I've actually seen such beautiful things and healing when they're able, each individual person in the couple is able to get that individual therapy while also getting couples therapies at the same time. And wow, it's really cool to see the growth. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's what we always bring it back to, is you can only do for you.
Yeah.
You can only change you. You can only work on you. Everything else is a plus, but it's all about starting with the self.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Mm-hmm.
And so the next thing I kind of wanted to talk about, again, bringing it back to the wedding planning process, are there any specific tips or maybe ways of working through decision making, conflict resolution in the wedding planning process? Because that all comes up. If anyone listening is not at one of those points yet, I'm just going to tell you, conflicts come up. You're going to have to make big decisions. You're going to have to deal with family opinions. So are there any things that you specifically would suggest for people to try or to help them work through this time?
Yeah, definitely. Think of like this wedding planning as like a pre-trial to kind of how you guys are going to navigate big conflicts. It would actually be a good kind of, we call it like baseline data, like where you guys at right now, right? To see how you guys navigate the decision-making process, which sometimes is really, really hard. And again, I want to put a disclaimer that these are very general tips. Okay. Again, these all might not apply to you specifically, depending on your specific unique relationship. However, there are some things that I kind of pulled up from, my experience in couples therapy and everything of things maybe to look out for or some tips and stuff. And one of the biggest things is before you even, start the planning, it's kind of setting intentions and sitting down with your partner about your wedding. What do you want it to look like? How do you want to celebrate you, right? What is the most important thing as a couple for this wedding, right? And all that good stuff. Like maybe like, how those places have like the mission statements?
Yes, absolutely.
Come up with a wedding mission statement of like, this is how we want our wedding to look like. This is how we want to celebrate with our family. Maybe that might help ground you guys when there is a lot of conflict, right? Yeah. And going back to it, like, remember, this is our mission statement of how we want things to go. Right. Another thing is, it's not you versus your partner. It's you two versus the problem.
Oh my God. Say that again.
It's about you two versus the problem, not you versus your partner. I could see potential fight for control when it comes to a wedding. And that's not what it's about. It's about working together for that mission statement. Right. And what you have said too of kind of like trying not to avoid something, a conflict, and pushing it under the rug or waiting to say something. Have those hard conversations. Do it. Because then resentment's gonna build in the wedding planning process, which is already stressful. I don't know. Right, and all that good stuff. With that being said, trying to stay connected during this process is going to be really important too, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of divide or like, I don't want to talk to you right now. And also if it gets really, really overwhelming or if it really is creating dysfunction in your relationship, I would suggest setting up some boundaries. Taking breaks from planning or setting up one specific day and time weekly or something to talk strictly wedding. To kind of give a sense of limit if it's creating a lot of dysfunction, because I could totally see that happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you could give me a little bit better anecdote of how that works. You've seen, but
But I mean, that is a thing I specifically tell all of my clients is when I see, because typically I meet monthly with them. And so they'll say, okay, here are all the different things that we've gotten done this month. And sometimes they'll say, we had a lot of personal stuff come up. We actually didn't get very much done. And I'll say, that's okay. That's why it's called a process. It's kind of like this roller coaster of you get really, really, really busy. And then you have slower months, right? It's this up and down. But also when I see that they're having a big month where they're like, we knocked out a whole bunch of stuff all the time. Great. Now take a break. Because, you have to set some of that time of saying it's a lot of wedding talk. It's a lot of decision. We can go into like decision overload, right? You get exhausted of having to make decisions. And that's how I feel at the end of a wedding, right? Is I'm like, I can't decide a single thing for the next 24 hours because it's too much. It's too much. And so now if we think about that feeling over 9 months, 12 months, 24 months, that's a long time. So that is what you said exactly, is what I often tell people is take breaks.
Yeah.
Where you're like, today or this whole week or even this whole month, we're not talking about the wedding. We're taking a break from that.
Have you ever seen in your experience a couple burn out from wedding planning?
Yes.
Oh,
and that's not
really?
fun because then they start to lose excitement for the wedding.
Yeah.
And again, I do always emphasize, yes, the wedding is important. It's the marriage that you're walking into. But then many times, especially by the end, people are like, I just want this to be done already. And that like sentence can be really hurtful for your partner to hear if they're maybe not at that level of burnout, or if they deal with that differently, right? Because then it feels like, oh, I just want this day to be over with. And so it's hard. I've seen it happen and I see the reaction in the partner and I'm just like, oh, my heart. And I know, I know that's not what they meant. They don't mean, I don't care about this anymore. They mean, I'm tired. I'm burnt out. And so I think a lot of these things like that you're talking about, like the mission statement, like the boundaries, the you two versus the problem, all of these different things, I think that will help people prevent getting to the point of burnout. Because once you're there, it takes a lot longer to heal from that than if you just kind of do things along the way to prevent it, right? Because of course we can all get overwhelmed, but I'm like, oh, you know, people spend so much time and so much money on events. And I'm like, I want you to enjoy your day, not feel like I just need this day to be over with, which I can understand how that comes up. And also we want to prevent that. We want people to have a good time. You know, we want them to enjoy the wedding, not just because it's over, but because of what it means. So yeah, that definitely has come up.
It must be so interesting to just like watch, because you're part of like, you kind of joined the family, right? When it comes to being the wedding planner, and like you start to see everything I've done. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I always say I am not a therapist. I could not handle being a therapist, but I definitely, because I am like a people watcher in a lot of ways. I see dynamics and I see personalities and I see who steps up and who pushes back. And because of actually really my training in theater and understanding how to help people, how to help pull things out of people, or how to tell people like, hey, you need to take a step back and let someone else step in. I help guide them in that as much as possible. You know, like if one person's talking a lot more than the other, then I will specifically ask the other person, hey, what about blah, 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 to kind of help bring in that dynamic. And I know that doesn't solve the entire issue or the entire dynamic, but it really is interesting to get to know them. And that is why I love talking to people from the beginning, right? Whether it's a full planning package or coordination, I come in early because getting to know their dynamic and their family dynamics is important, right? It's
that's so exciting.
It's really interesting. Truly. I get to know them, and that's really why cool. I just love my couples forever. I'm like, I know stuff that's come up over the last 2 years. If you had this serious family issue, or if there's something exciting, like I just truly love them forever. And it's just, you build
I never realized how intimate it could be to be a wedding planner, but I think that shows that it's really important. Maybe like an important aspect of choosing a wedding planner would be, are they in tune? Are they empathetic? You know, will they like really listen to my needs, or will they brush me off like whatever? Right?
Absolutely. And that's why I started this entire business, is because I saw that happen. I saw it happen to my very best friend, who, just shout out, I hope to interview her at some point this season, but I saw her and her partner's needs be brushed off. I saw them be hurt in so many ways. And I'm just like, first of all, you're getting paid to do this job. So like, do your job right. First of all, right? Just as a basis, any job, if you're getting paid, do it right. But also you're dealing with people in a really vulnerable time in their lives. They're stressed. they're putting in a lot financially. They're dealing with a lot of family things that come up, right?
Yeah.
Family dynamics. And so to me, that's why I started this business. I said, I want to do right by people. That's important to me. And I work with all people, but I'm also really specific about the people that I really love spending time with and really work with, because that's who I feel called to serve and to help build, right? Just like what you're saying, the reason you went into this field, why you're in your program now, all of these things, it's like, it's very specific. Like the BIPOC community, the LGBTQIA plus community, like this millennial community, like all of these things, these are my, like the niche, right? This is like, these are my people.
Yeah.
These are my people. And I can serve them in a very specific way. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely an experience, and it's something I love.
Oh, something I would not be able to do.
Says the therapist.
Yeah, planning is not my thing.
We all have our strengths,
yes,
and
definitely.
And that's the important part. I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway that I want people listening, specifically couples who are already planning or thinking about planning, is it's a lot of people that are part of this journey with you, and we all want good things for you. Typically we come into this world of like, well, I don't want to pay someone for this thing that I could do myself, or that my sister could do or my aunt could do. And between planning and a therapist, it's like these people care about you. We want to see the best thing for you. And with therapists, again, going back to all of the trauma that we've seen happen before, when you find the right person who gets you, who understands the experience, it's so much easier to connect. And it makes it that much more valuable, right? To have that person to talk to. And then as a couple, right? To get to go to someone who doesn't have the family dynamic of, oh, well, I don't want my mother-in-law to know all of our drama, right? You have that safe person.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been so fun, so incredible. Is there anything else that you think would be helpful for couples or individuals to think about as they get ready, maybe to bring up this conversation with their partner, or if they're already having it, or preferably if they're listening to this together, how do they move forward with this thing?
Yeah, I mean, other, general recommendations that I would have is, accept that your partner will disappoint you and frustrate you.
Yeah.
Kind of just that acceptance, because I think, social media romanticizes relationships and marriages a lot. And that could really set us with expectations, like the Disney stuff, right? Of all these things, and really just accepting that, you will just be disappointed, right? But it's not the end of the world, right? I would also kind of recommend trying to always repair in a relationship. And when I say that, I mean, not leaving things just like open-ended, right? Instead of avoiding it and all these things, like really trying to repair that part. Because a lot of us who grew up with immigrant parents, I can definitely speak of that. We never learned how to repair. It was like yell and then it's over. When it could be yell, pause, repair, say sorry, whatever that repair looks like, and then move forward. Right. So definitely repair. Know that 69% of the things couples fight about are unsolvable.
Interesting.
So, the goal is kind of being less right and more about just understanding, validating each other's point of view, while also maintaining respect. The respect part is really important. Okay. Because that's where marriages start to crumble, is when there's that contempt, when there's that like defensiveness, right? All these things of kind of like the disrespect part of it. And it can really destroy a relationship, and so that's really important. Kind of building a culture of appreciation and like a solid friendship,
Yes.
your partner. That's one of the most important things, because can you really see yourself being stuck in a house during a quarantine?
Right.
With this person. Now, of course, you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
However,
that's not really healthy, but if it happens.
Yeah, it's atypical.
Right.
However, having like a healthy relationship and friendship will make it more bearable. Right. And also actually having a solid friendship as the foundation of your marriage also help you with the decision making, because you're going to give your partner the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
You're going to maintain respect. Right. You're going to accept each other's influence, which is really also important. It's not you versus your partner.
Yes.
It's
correct.
you two together. Right. So yeah. And what I just added, because you said it and I thought it was, yes, definitely, of working on yourself through your own personal therapy, seeing your own triggers, seeing how your experiences have kind of influence how you act in a relationship, right? And all that good stuff. That is really important too. Absolutely. Because especially if you're a person with trauma or you're a trauma survivor, a lot of times we have these deep-seated triggers that we think our partner should take care of or be the caretaker of. Yeah. When in reality, we are solely responsible for our triggers. Yes. Right. Unfortunately, that's how trauma works, where what you didn't get from your parents, you start to expect in your romantic relationship. But then ask yourself, do you want to take care of his or her or they's problems? No. Yeah.
That's unfair. It's so much to ask of the person. And like you said, you'll just always be disappointed if you're expecting someone else to do that for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're all adults now. We can take care of us. And honestly, we're the only ones that truly know how to take care of ourselves. Absolutely. Which is kind of empowering if you really think about it, So yeah, those are kind of the recommendations I have. Hopefully some of them help. Yes. And again, depending on your relationship, some might not.
Right. And that's the biggest thing is every relationship is different. Every individual is different. Every situation is different. So obviously this is an overview. This is like why you would want to potentially go into therapy, and you may need to see a few different people before you land on the right person. But I think this has been such a great jumping off point for our couples of if you don't want to start this conversation by yourself, you could say, hey, JJ has a new episode out. Let's listen to this. Oh, it just happens to be about therapy. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. I've listened to it 3 times. It's like sometimes you need this thing to start the conversation 100%. And to just hear, for your partner to hear, oh, this is what it could be like. Yeah. So we hope that this has been helpful to everyone listening, especially if you're listening together to this. I hope that you continue this conversation. Maybe you need a little time for yourself to process and to think through what is coming up as you're listening to this. But hopefully you two can have a conversation about it and continue this and ask each other and yourselves, what can we gain from this? Not what will we lose? What can we gain from this? And if we're moving into wanting to spend the rest of our lives together, then it should be a positive thing. So thank you, Krista, again, so much. Seriously, for being here today and having this conversation. Again, we're continuing to break this stigma, specifically in the BIPOC community of, talking about therapy, it not being just for, severe mental health needs. But I'm so excited for people to get to know you, to get to know themselves a little bit better as well. And so how can people reach out to you? Where can we follow you on social media? How can we reach out to you if we just want to also just say thank you for, something came up for people?
Yeah, well, this was such an honor and also a pleasure being on here. I know we talked a lot about what can go wrong in a marriage, but know that when you really put in the work and effort and all these things, a marriage can be such a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Especially during these very stressful times, you know. It's good to have that kind of connection and support and being heard and seen. Like, oh, it's such a beautiful thing. So even though we talked about a lot of negative
I know.
stuff, there is the beautiful outcome of a marriage, you know.
Absolutely.
And I still have a ton of hope for, you know, the coming generation and everything like that. And so I'm usually on Instagram at Therapy by Krista with the K. All my info is there, my number, my email, my Psychology Today also, you know, page is up there, the link and everything. I'm so excited when I see people of color like getting therapy. So even if like I might not be a good fit for you, please still contact me and I can help you find a good fit for you. I am so like, yes, therapy. So even if I'm not the good fit, I can help you, you know, because I'm not a good fit for everybody and that's okay. But let's say you're from a different ethnicity. Let me help you, especially if it's daunting to you, if it's the hardest to get your foot in the door.
Yes.
Because it's just, there's so many things you need to do to get therapy. And it's just like, oh, okay. So I'm also open to that. If you want to DM me, any questions that you have, need help or anything, feel free to contact me on Therapy by Krista on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Krista. Again, thank you. And I hope everyone gets a chance to, at the minimum, follow her on Instagram and reach out. And if there's something that you learned or came up for you, definitely give her a shout out, a little holler out there. And thank you again so much for your time. I appreciate it personally. And I know the people listening do as well. So thank you. And we'll hopefully have a part 2 at some point with some other. I'm like, I think there's a lot of things that came up today that we can pull into new episodes.
Ask away.
Okay, friends, ya se terminó. That's it. Thank you so much for joining us today. We can be BFFs on Facebook and Insta at JJ the Wedding Planner Co. And did you know that you can directly schedule a call with me? It's true. Check out the link in the show notes to pick a time. And if you're not sure if having a wedding planner is right for you, then this is the time to ask me those questions. So check out that link to set up your time one-on-one with me. And before you go, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review on today's episode and tell us what you are loving so far. Thank you so much. Los quiero. Adios.